In 1983, Mary M. Landell, who resided on Lake Erie at the time, walked out onto her front porch as the sun was rising. That morning, the lake was calm and peaceful. That would soon change, though. Miss Landell would look out onto the lake and see what she believed was a boat that had capsized. However, upon further inspection, she saw some type of monster. It had a brownish green color and was 40 to 50 feet long. She saw a long neck protruding from the water, as well as the eye on the side of the head. The creature would disappear under the surface of Lake Erie. That day, Mary Landell would see what came to be known as the Lake Erie Monster, or Bessie. Bessie is described as resembling a plesiosaur, which were aquatic reptiles that went extinct millions of years ago. Like many water cryptids, the size of the beast has varied with different eyewitness reports, some around 20 feet, while others say it is about 60 feet long. Bessie is described as being bluish-gray with a long neck on many occasions, but also has been seen to be more greenish-brown. With so many people out on the lake today, it's tough to imagine such a large beast could reside undetected. Surprisingly, though, there are a good number of sightings that have occurred over the centuries. Just 2 years before Mary saw Bessie, Teresa Kovac would spot something in the water. In 1981, Kovac would spot a snake-like reptile. She noted it seemed to be playing and was so large it could have knocked over a boat. In 1985, Tony Schill was out on a boat in Lake Erie when he would spot a strange creature. He saw 5 humps protruding from the water, and the experienced fisherman would later say that no way was it a sturgeon. That same year in the summer, Dale Munro would spot Bessie off the Lorraine Coast Guard station. He stated the beast was at least twice the size of his boat, which was 16 feet. He described the beast as black and watched it for 4 minutes. One interesting finding occurred in 1989. A fish finder would record something truly strange. Streetboro resident Ken Smith would record something 35 feet in length, around 30 feet deep. It was cigar-shaped. In 1990, Harold Brickett and his family were fishing when they would see a massive creature in the water. They were just north of Cedar Point Amusement Park when they would spot a serpent-like creature in the water. Brickett would report it swam along with their boat and was around 35 feet in length. On September 11th, 1990, 2 fire inspectors, Jim Johnson and Steve Dirks, would spot Bessie. Although the men were inside and looking at the creature from a 3rd-story window, they watched the beast for quite some time. They noted multiple parts of the creature were above water, and it was black around 35 feet. While these are some of the better-known sightings in modern day, it's important to point out that many existed as well in prior decades. The first documented sighting of this cryptid occurred in 1793. Then, just north of Sandusky, Ohio, a captain on a ship named Felicity was duck hunting. He fired a shot and suddenly, a large creature began thrashing around his boat. It must have surprised the creature as it momentarily surfaced. The captain said the creature was at least 25 feet long. In 1817, there would be several more sightings. In July, a crew out on the water would spot a monster at least 30 feet. None of the crew could identify what it was. Sometime that same year, another ship would report a similar sighting, a large creature appearing snake-like and having a dark color. Sometime later, in 1817, 2 brothers would spot a massive creature on the beach of Lake Erie. It was around 20 to 30 feet in size and appeared to be just about ready to die. The brothers were familiar with the aquatic life in the water and compared the animal to a sturgeon, although it wasn't a sturgeon, since it had arms. The brothers fled, and when they returned, the creature was nowhere to be seen. In July 1892, a ship traveling through Lake Erie would spot Bessie. In the distance ahead, a captain and his crew would spot a large creature in the water. When they got closer, they got a much better look. The creature would rise up out of the water, its head several feet out. The crew estimated Bessie to be about 50 feet long and have a circumference of around 4 feet. In May 1896, a group of witnesses would report seeing Bessie off Crystal Beach. The witnesses said they watched Bessie for around 30 to 45 minutes, and that it had a dog-like head. As we see, there's certainly been a large number of sightings of Bessie. Located on the border of Canada and the United States, Lake Erie is the smallest of the 5 Great Lakes. It is relatively shallow, going only around 200 feet deep at the deepest part, and averaging around 60 throughout the lake. Still, while compared to other lakes, it is the 11th largest lake in the world and has around 800 miles of shoreline. At its widest point, it is around 57 miles across. Interestingly, the lake is said to house thousands of shipwrecks, with many speculated to be well preserved. All this raises the question around whether this cryptid could exist. It doesn't seem as clear-cut as other cases that this creature does exist. However, there have been a large number of sightings, and while some were surely mistaken identity, others had multiple witnesses and surely saw something. Over the years, there's been several theories proposed. One is that the witnesses misidentified what they saw. It's very possible and likely some of the witnesses saw either an eel or a snake. One possibility is a sturgeon. Sturgeons breach the water and do a tail walk in a pose that makes it look like the neck and head of a sea serpent. The fish never stop growing, and the average size is about 5 feet, with reports of the fish growing up to 10 to 12 feet. Other possibilities include moose or a bear. It's been photographed that multiple moose crossing water can appear as humps. Still, it's unlikely a moose or a bear would be in the middle of the lake, as they probably only swim in areas of the lake that are not wide across. One other possibility is a school of fish. These will appear black, although they definitely cannot protrude out of the water. For those who believe this is not a known animal, there are generally 2 theories. One is that this is a new species, one that may have evolved from something else. This raises questions around how they evaded detection for so long, though. One thought is the creature is nocturnal and limits its exposure to daylight. The second theory says that the creature is a surviving prehistoric creature. Perhaps Bessie is a species that somehow survived extinction. The final theory around Bessie is a hybrid theory. This stipulates that some sightings were legit, while others were cases of mistaken identity. Perhaps this creature lived in the lake for centuries, but then began to die out in the mid-20th century. With the locals familiar about the monster, they may have started looking for things that weren't there. We know gauging size and objects in the water is very difficult. Often witnesses only get a glance for a few seconds at something. In addition, it's possible that other animals, such as a moose or a bear, could have been in the water. While several cases, if true, clearly demonstrate that something has been in the water, there doesn't appear to be one ironclad sighting that can't somewhat be scrutinized. For that, in our opinion, you would need a modern-day sighting with multiple independent witnesses and seeing a close visual of the head and part of the body out of the water for at least a few seconds. Most of the eyewitness accounts have one or two of these characteristics, but not all. Still, like many other water cryptids, it's very possible that something remains hidden, or at least at one time existed under the surface of Lake Erie. In the early 1900s, a boat with two men traveled into the Amazon River basin on an extremely dangerous mission. The men were there to kill the massive apex predator that stalked the river mouth. Armed with explosives, the men detonated them in the river. Instead of killing the prey, though, the massive snake, bloodied and barely wounded, rose from the water, staring at the men. The gigantic snake then swam off in the opposite direction, allowing the men to live. The men had just encountered the most feared predator in the Amazon rainforest, a beast known to the locals as Yacumama. Yacumama, which translates into the Mother of Waters, is a massive snake said to inhabit the Amazon River basin. The size of the creature is one that is frightening just to think about. Locals say the creature grows up to 160 feet in length, with a head 6 feet across. Legend has it that the beast can eat anyone who comes within 100 feet. Since the creature is so dangerous, locals will blow a conch horn when coming near the water so that the creature, if around, will show itself. It is said that the Yacumama has attacked numerous boats and fishermen on the water. The sheer size of the Yacumama is enough to be terrifying, but could a snake this size still be lurking around today? The most common and popular theory is that Yacumamas are extinct titanoboas. The titanoboa was a massive snake that roamed the Amazon. It is said that they were about 45 feet on average, which is about 30 feet longer than the green anaconda, the largest snake that exists today. Still, some scientists believe that Titanoboa was much larger than this, and that this is supported as well by tales of indigenous tribes who live in the Amazon and several Westerners. Throughout history, local tribes of the Amazon have told stories of snakes over 100 feet. The waters of the Amazon are murky, with many unexplored waterways, and various cultures have given different names to the massive beast. While many stories come from locals, the first popular sighting from a Westerner around a large, gigantic snake came from a legendary explorer. Perry Fawcett, a renowned British geographer and explorer of South America, was the first individual to officially document an encounter with a gigantic snake creature. In 1907, Fawcett traveled to Bolivia on an expedition. There, Fawcett documented a large snake around 60 feet in length and 1 foot wide that was swimming around his boat. It's important to remember that Fawcett was a serious explorer, respected throughout Great Britain, and that he had been honored by the Royal Geographical Society. Unfortunately, on a latter expedition, Fawcett and his son disappeared into the forest, searching for the lost city of Z, and were never heard from again. Although Fawcett was the first official documented sighting of the large snake, he would not be the last. Juan Carlos Palomino, a Peruvian man and ex-commando, claims he killed a snake about 40 feet long during a military exercise. Palomino was a skilled hunter and survivalist, having once survived alone in the jungle for 11 days by himself with only a knife. Palomino also stated if he had the time and financial backing, he could find a snake just as big. Some speculate, though, that Palomino and his unit killed Titanoboa's cousin, the green anaconda. One claim that happened in the 21st century involves a man from Ireland. In 2009, Mike Warner, an Irish lithographer, alleged he had found evidence of the creature using satellite photos. Up until the early 2000s, scientists did not believe that snakes ever grew to be the size of Titanoboa. That would soon change, though, with a remarkable discovery. In 2002, a Colombian student discovered a fossilized leaf on a visit in the massive coal mine at Cerrejón in Colombia. The find intrigued scientists as they learned the area had once been home to a sprawling jungle. After excavating, archaeologists were astounded to find giant turtles and giant crocodiles, and some of the first bananas, avocados, and bean plants that ever sprouted on planet Earth. With this, they found a massive vertebrae, a vertebrae too big to belong to any jungle snake on record. It was truly an incredible find, and diggers immediately began combing the mines for more fragments of the jungle titan. Luckily, over the next few years, a team would find remains of 28 enormous serpents and 3 skull fragments. Besides Titanoboa, if this beast exists, there are generally 2 accepted theories as to what it could be. The first is a new snake species, one related to the green anaconda, but far longer and wider. In such hostile territory as the Amazon rainforest, it's reasonable to assume that one could easily hide in the murky, dark waters. A second theory is that this snake is simply an extremely large anaconda that is well outside the normal size range. We know that snakes and other reptiles continue growing until death, so it's reasonable to assume some have to end up on the extremely large end of the spectrum. A massive snake can stay motionless for months resting and only surface when it needs to feed. This could explain as well why so few sightings have occurred. In addition, a massive snake that size would have no natural predators. In the jungle, even large anacondas have a natural predator, the jaguar. The Amazon is the largest rainforest in the world, with more than 2.5 million square miles of dense, lush green forests. The biodiversity of this area is the highest on Earth, and it's said that there are millions of undiscovered species living there. Much of the environment has yet to be fully explored due to the flash flooding, sheer size, and dangerous conditions. It's said that the extinct Titanoboa thrived during its time due to the high temperatures on Earth. This led many creatures to be larger than normal and provided ample food for Titanoboa. Many believe that one of the multiple ice ages killed off the species. Others point out that over time less food and land was available, and this has led to smaller animals surviving. This all raises the question, if a massive snake is out there, when will we find it? It's important to remember that outsiders tend to be the ones that dismiss the idea of massive snakes. Scientists tend to require proof to believe in such creatures. Still, we must stress, many indigenous tribes believe in these creatures, and they reside in the area. There's even been sightings of 30-foot snakes in Japan, a country with snakes that grow no more than 10 feet. It is our opinion that a massive 40 to 50-foot snake will be found and documented in the near future. This is simply because snakes grow until death, and that one well outside the normal spectrum should be found in time. Any expedition will have more advanced technology than the past and be able to provide clearer images. Still, there is considerable difficulty with getting an expedition funded for such a purpose. Not to mention, not many are willing to venture into the jungle for weeks on end. It's an extremely difficult place to survive, with poisonous insects, a variety of predators, diseases, and threats of flash flooding. Despite this, expeditions in the Amazon are ongoing, and we are learning more about the area every day. In such a massive, dense, unexplored area, it's certainly within the realm of possibility that a massive snake could exist. When most people think of Gloucester, Massachusetts, they think of a fishing town with a proud history. Made popular by the 2000 Hollywood movie The Perfect Storm, the town has been known for centuries for its tough fishermen and fishing waters that contain a variety of fish, including cod, flounder, striped bass, and much more. Over the centuries, though, stories have persisted of another creature that lurks off the coast, something spotted on multiple occasions. It became so apparent to residents that this animal existed, with hundreds, possibly thousands seeing it, that it was even named and recognized by the prestigious Linnean Society. The creature has become to be known as the Gloucester Sea Serpent and has been called the most documented sea serpent cryptid ever. The Gloucester Sea Serpent is typically described in one of two ways. Some describe it as a long, snake-like creature, while others state it resembles more of a whale, being humpbacked and having a head like a dinosaur. Often described as black or gray, being between 60 to 100 feet long, witnesses often say the creature moves through the water in a caterpillar-like motion. Observers say that the creature swims with a vertical motion, and his body appears as humps. While the majority of the sightings happened in 1817 and the following years, the first recorded sighting was in 1638 by John Jocelyn. He spotted the creature off the coast of Cape Ann, which includes Gloucester and other New England towns. Jocelyn was a well-respected British author who wrote about his experience in an account of 2 voyages to New England. Between this time and 1817, sightings of the Gloucester Sea Serpent would continue, albeit they were sporadic and not well documented. Then, in 1817, sightings of the sea serpent began exploding. On August 6, 1817, 2 women and a fisherman spotted the creature in the harbor. That same day, a sea captain went to Lipple's auction house and reported seeing a 60-foot serpent in the harbor. On August 10th, Lydia Watson spotted it near Rocky Neck and believed it was 60 to 70 feet long. Later the same day, William Rowe reported seeing a 100-foot creature on the water. On August 14th, witnesses, hearing all the stories, began to watch for the creature off the harbor shores. The creature was seen in the area of 10 Pound Island and Norman's Woe, as well as farther into the harbor, as far as Pavilion Beach. The spectators said the body was brown in color. Witnesses compared it to a string of gallon kegs 100 feet long. Some saw a smooth back, while others saw humps or bunches as it went up and down like a caterpillar. Some say it moved sideways, like a snake slithering. There were reports of a horn protruding from the head. On August 18th of that year, one report from that day came from a witness who said 2 serpents were playing with one another, or perhaps mating. During this time, other reports came in as well. A group of fishermen allegedly saw a 60-foot serpent-like creature with a head similar to a turtle swimming off the coast of Gloucester. Another story comes from a group of fishermen aboard the schooner named Adamant in May 1818. Captain Joseph Wooder and his crew reported seeing a large creature having a head like a serpent and a humpback body. It was swimming alongside their vessel and frightened the men, so the crew fired a cannon at the monster. They missed, and it vanished beneath the ocean water. During this time, all the attention would attract the attention of the prestigious Linnean Society of New England and General David Humphreys, George Washington's general. Humphreys interviewed numerous eyewitnesses. He managed to uncover information about the monster from these eyewitnesses. Judge John Davis, the head of the Linnean Society, commissioned Lonson Nash, Gloucester's Justice of the Peace, to take sworn statements from eyewitnesses. Nash recorded testimony, compiled a report, and submitted it to his organization. During this time, the United States was still trying to establish itself as a reputable scientific community. Many believed that the Linnean Society pursued this creature so hard, since discovering it would gather worldwide attention, especially if they had a specimen. And soon enough, they had one. One day, a group of Gloucester residents walking in Loblolly Cove found a small black snake on the beach. The back had tiny humps, and many believed they had finally discovered a baby. They wrapped up the corpse and sent the specimen to the Linnean Society. The organization was ecstatic and named the new species Scoliopas atlanticus. However, once dissected, the serpent proved to be nothing more than a black racer snake with tumors on its back. Although this was disappointing, it didn't stop more sightings from occurring. In July 1833, off the shores of Nahant Bay, hundreds would witness a massive serp, and many of them attested it couldn't have been something else. More documented sightings would occur in 1877, as printed in the Boston Globe. The newspaper said, "The shiny sea serpent, which has been such a terror along the New England coast during the past few years, has made his debut in Nahant waters this season. He was seen on Monday and again this morning, and the circumstances of his presence are given in such detail by astonished beholders that there is general credence given to the statement that an unusual and prodigious serpentine monster is displaying himself in the waters of Massachusetts Bay." While sightings continued sporadically throughout the 19th century, there have been very few that have occurred in the 20th century. The most famous, though, is said to have occurred in 1962 off the coast of Marshfield, Massachusetts, although there's much skepticism over this sighting. There's been much speculation over the years as to why sightings of this cryptid have decreased. Some believe that overfishing may have caused the creature to migrate away, as there wouldn't be enough food. Others believe that as ships switched from sail to diesel, the sea serpents were scared off by the noise, or perhaps didn't like the pollution from the diesel. While there was never any hard evidence found, it cannot be understated how many people witnessed the creature. By all accounts, these were reputable people, and we all must remember the town of Gloucester is a beach town with most of the people living their whole lives around the ocean. Many fishermen spotted the creature, and some accounts have them actually capturing a body. Despite this, many believe this was a case of misidentification, and that the people had good intentions. Still, there are several theories as to what the creature was. One is that it was a narwhal. This theory was put forth by Joe Nichol. A narwhal whale is a medium-sized toothed whale that lives in cold waters. They tend to be in the Arctic and around Greenland, but Nichol believed that since some of the witnesses saw a spear coming from the head, it might be a narwhal that came up. Another theory is that this was an eel. Many dismiss this though, since eels are not anywhere near that size. A third theory that some believe is that it could have been an anaconda. They are known to get up to 40, perhaps 50 feet. However, they are usually only found in fresh water and also tropical environments. A fourth theory that some believe is that it could have been a school of dolphins bunched together, or another whale species in a line. It seems, though, that the people of Gloucester would know this. While there doesn't appear to be any definitive conclusion around what the Gloucester residents saw. Although without question there were hundreds of reputable citizens who saw something in the water. Something large and something that couldn't be identified by people who have watched these waters their whole life. We know that sea serpents do exist. There are sea serpents that exist in the Indian Ocean, and it is said they grow to around 10 feet. Well, this is a huge difference between 60 and 100 feet, perhaps somewhere in the massive, unexplored oceans of the world. This creature exists. In 1953, Viktor Verdogobov was on a geological expedition in the remote wilderness of Siberia. The team he was with had ventured far into eastern Siberia and had made their way to Lake Labynkyr. As the team went out on the water, they would soon encounter a legendary beast, one that many locals had told stories about for centuries. In today's episode, we will examine the creature known as the Labynkyr Devil. As Victor and his men ventured out on the lake that day, they had been warned by locals of the monster that lurked beneath the pristine waters of Lake Labynkyr. Still, the team had work to do and needed to go out on the lake. As they traveled across it, Victor and team would see a disturbance on the water in the distance. It appeared to be moving in an arc-like fashion. Then, as if it became aware of their presence, the disturbance on the water began heading toward Victor and his men. As it reached them, the team was terrified, and then the creature rose out of the water. Victor would describe the beast as being gray, with piercing eyes. It rose a little higher, and then suddenly dived back into the water in one motion. At that point, Victor and team knew what they had seen. It was the monster the locals had warned them about. Victor and team would return from the wilderness and report their findings to the scientific community along with their strange encounter. Up until that point, the legend of the Labynkyr Devil was considered only fiction in Russia. However, the expedition had given much credibility to the sighting. Victor and team were respected scientists, and they told the Siberian Times that they were even able to find jaws and a skeleton of some animal on the lake floor. Still, it's important to point out that the remains were never brought back for testing. In time, more interesting events concerning something living in the lake would happen in the years to come. In 2012, Ludmila Emelianova, an associate professor of biogeography at Moscow State University, said she used sonar readings on the lake, and she found something very unusual. The professor claims she saw several large underwater objects on her equipment in the lake. She would state in the Siberian Times in April 2014,
"The object was very dense, of homogeneous structure, surely not a fish nor a shoal of a fish, and it was above the bottom. I was very surprised, but not scared, and not shocked. After all, we did not see this animal. We only registered a strange object in the water. But I can clearly say, at the moment, as a scientist, I cannot offer you any explanation of what this object might be. I can't say we literally found and touched something unusual there, but we did register with our echo sounding device several seriously big underwater objects, bigger than a fish, bigger than even a group of fish."
The professor would also state they recorded the anomalies on multiple occasions. One unnamed fisherman reportedly had an encounter on the lake. He claimed something large bumped the bottom of his boat, causing it to almost capsize. He believes something massive and unknown lives in the waters. After Victor's expedition, the lake would be subject to more investigation in the following years, although due to the location of it, it still made it difficult for many to get out there and explore it. Lake Labynkyr is located in Far East Russia and has about 17 square miles of shoreline. Although the lake isn't extremely deep, with only an average depth of 171 feet, it should be said the lake has many mysteries. For one, despite being in the freezing wilderness, the lake doesn't freeze. Other lakes around the area do though. Many have speculated that an underground hot spring keeps the lake from freezing. Still, tales of the devil go back centuries and even predate the Loch Ness Monster. In such a remote and difficult location to reach, very few travel to the region, especially in the freezing cold months. There are several theories concerning what this creature could be. One theory is that the witnesses actually saw a giant pikefish. Giant pike are known to grow very big, around 5 feet. They are known to exist in the lake, but many don't believe it is actually a pikefish because what has been seen or spotted is reported to be much larger. Some think it is a prehistoric amphibious creature like a plesiosaurus or another type of animal that hasn't gone extinct. Others question this as the lake is very cold and desolate at the bottom. Many question if there would be adequate food to sustain a huge creature. One interesting theory is that the creature is a Greenland shark. Greenland sharks are known to live for hundreds of years and eat algae. This eliminates the argument around food sources. These sharks, though, live in the deep, remote parts of the ocean in the north, around eastern Canada and northern Europe. The sharks grow to be around 10 to 15 feet long, and much is not known around them since they live in such remote parts of the ocean. Could a Greenland shark have swam into the lake centuries or millennia ago somehow? It appears at this point the evidence for this cryptid has still not been found. It seems, though, that if a lake monster was going to exist, this remote lake would be one of the best places in the world for it to exist. In 1997, around the Zintavla River in Mount Aleph, South Africa, a series of killings occurred by something strange in the water. 9 villagers would be killed in total, frightening nearby communities. As word spread about the killings, the South African press would descend on the area to learn what was happening. According to the natives, a large, reptile-like monster that has terrorized the waters for centuries had attacked and killed 9 members of their community. The villagers refer to this beast as a deity known as Mamlambo, or the brain sucker. Mamlambo is typically described in one of 2 ways. The first is a massive reptile with the torso of a horse, lower body of a fish, short legs, and neck of a snake. There are different variations of this, with some versions of the body being more fish-like. Mamlambo is said to be around 60 feet long, and some say it emits a faint green light that can be seen under the water. This is because Mamlambo's scales resemble precious gemstones that emit a glow beneath the water's surface. Mamlambo is said to manifest during lightning storms. It is said also it has the ability to hypnotize anyone who looks into its eyes. Similar to a crocodile, it can come out of the water, grab unsuspecting victims, and drag them deep underwater. The second way Mamlambo is often described is more mythological in nature. This way says that Mamlambo resembles a mermaid. The creature is described as beautiful and possessing a long tail. This version says the creature is seductive and dangerous. She lures people into the water and then kills them. Mamlambo draws its name from mythology. In Zulu mythology, Mamlambo is a god associated with the lakes and rivers. Natives believe that Mamlambo demands sacrifices. If not, Mamlambo may punish villagers by flooding or possibly inflicting a drought. Mamlambo is said to be able to shapeshift and control the ebbs and flows of the water. So is there any truth to an unknown cryptid, a massive reptile, lurking in the Zintavla River? As mentioned earlier, natives call Mamlambo the brain sucker because when victims' bodies are finally pulled from the water, they are missing their faces. Natives believe Mamlambo chomps through the face to the brain. However, police who investigated the deaths in 1997 said that the faces were eaten by crabs and fish. Is Mamlambo then just a myth? Not according to one older native named Matshunga. Matshunga was quoted saying, "It is a big snake, and I have seen what it does. It has the head and neck of a snake, and it shines at night with a green light." If these statements are true, it suggests possibly a new massive reptile lurks in these waters. Of course, there's a strong possibility that the victims were killed by either a massive crocodile or hippopotamus. While both don't tend to mainly reside in South Africa and tend to be further up north, it's certainly possible that one could have traveled south. As far as the green light, it's surely possible that the light can be explained by fish, as many fish are capable of emitting light. It could even be insects emitting light over the water. In the nighttime, it would be difficult to tell the difference. Without question, Mamlambo draws comparisons to Inkanyamba, another African water cryptid that has roots in mythology, but some say is actually real. Some compare Mamlambo to Dobhar-Chu, the Irish crocodile, but there appears to be more credible sightings that have occurred with Dobhar-Chu. It seems more likely than not that based on the very low number of sightings, especially very few if any from Westerners, that Mamlambo is a case of mistaken identity. Still, it's important to remember only the natives reside in these areas and they know their land and their waterways. It could entirely be within the realm of possibility that a large, unknown reptilian cryptid lurks in these waters. In 1970, Laurent Dumont, age 10 at the time, was fishing with his family out on Lake Manitoba in the Winnipeg province of Canada. As the day winded down and the family started heading back to shore, the family saw something in the water ahead. It wasn't a floating log, and it appeared as shiny black humps poking out just above the water. Dumont would say the skin texture resembled an orca. As they got closer, Dumont and his family, well aware of the legendary creature that inhabited the lake, became excited as they might finally be able to see the creature up close. Then, around 20 to 30 feet away, the creature dipped under the water and disappeared. Dumont and his family had came close to seeing the mysterious water creature said to inhabit Lake Manitoba, a creature that has become to be known as Manipogo. Manipogo is typically described as having a muddy brown body with humps that show above the water. Witnesses say the creature is around 12 to 50 feet in length, and some report it has a sheep-like or reptile-like head. It has been described as eel-like or snake-like in appearance. While many quickly dismiss Manipogo as folklore and a creature that never existed, there's quite a bit of evidence that something could have been in this lake, or perhaps still is. On Friday, August 18, 1961, a newspaper article written in the Calgary Herald details how many in the surrounding communities believed something was in the lake. Dr. James MacLeod, a university professor and head of zoology at the University of Manitoba was convinced something was in the lake. In the article, it details how Dr. MacLeod spoke with many residents that witnessed the creature. The article states that every year since 1955, parties of swimmers, fishermen, and sightseers reported sighting the monster around late July or early August. Also, it mentions a strange, unknown bone discovered as well by resident Oscar Fredrickson. Later, the bone was said to be likely from an ancient sea monster that swam inland after the last ice age. Dr. MacLeod was convinced that the monster existed. He planned to use skin divers in large nets to search for it, but unfortunately wasn't able to find any hard evidence. It should be said the lake is fairly shallow at only around 23 feet, but with such a large lake and working in dark conditions, it's very reasonable to assume that skin divers could have easily missed hard evidence and also simply not even searched a good portion of the area. A year prior to Dr. MacLeod's search, perhaps the most famous sighting of the beast would occur in 1960. On August 10th, 1960, 17 people said they saw 3 creatures swimming in the water. It's reported many of the witnesses didn't know one another, but all never wavered in their story. One of the witnesses that day, Tom Loch, a land inspector, would dub the name of the creature as Manipogo. Another popular sighting that occurred in the early 1960s occurred in 1962. 2 fishermen, Richard Vincent and John Conefall, alleged to have seen a large monster similar to a serpent or giant snake. The men were on their boat on Lake Manitoba near the mouth of the Waterhen River. Vincent took a photo of the sighting, and to date this appears to be the only alleged photo of Manipogo. Although sightings date back to the 1800s, the first documented sighting was reported in 1909 by Hudson Bay's Company's fur trader Valentine Mackay, who says he saw a massive snake-like creature. Still, other documented sightings occurred as well in modern day. In 1989, Sean Smith and his family were visiting from Minneapolis, Minnesota. They were on a camping trip and stayed at Shallow Point off Highway number 6 on Lake Manitoba. While on the lake, Smith says they saw a creature about 80 feet in length with many humps coming from the water. In 1997, campers from Quebec who were on Lundar Beach campground alleged to see a large reptile head rise above the water and then disappear below the surface. The creature was several hundred feet offshore, but still panic ensued and swimmers evacuated the water. The official statement was that the object was a log, but a search of the area didn't find this. In 2004, commercial fisherman Keith Hayden reported some of his fishing nets on Lake Manitoba were torn up by something even more strange. The fish in the nets weren't nibbled on, but were actually bitten in half. This, of course, raised the question as to what could actually do this. Lake Manitoba is located around 47 miles to the northwest of Winnipeg and is the 14th largest lake in Canada at 1,785 square miles, often overshadowed by the nearby massive Lake Winnipeg. Lake Manitoba is a popular spot for fishing, campers, and outdoorsmen. While many have come to the lake, some have reported seeing the creature in the water over the years. In fact, native tribes have told stories of the beast for centuries, and finally in 1960 the creature was named Manipogo in a tribute to the more famous Canadian cryptid water monster, Ogopogo. There are those that believe the monster is nothing more than wishful thinking. In 1959, local radio DJ Don Curtin got word about a sighting of Manipogo. He went and interviewed the witness and played it the next day. The interview was wildly popular, and soon Many people were out in their boats looking for Manipogo. It's said in the area every summer Manipogo fever exists as sightings and the popularity of the creature explodes. There are several theories concerning Manipogo. The first is that Manipogo is simply a moose and its calf or calves. It's well documented that when moose and their calves travel through water, it can appear as humps in the water. Also, an individual moose could appear as humps if the head is above water as well as its humps. While this can explain some of the sightings, it surely cannot explain all of them though. For example, any sighting where the creature disappeared under the water for an extended period couldn't be a moose, as they obviously need oxygen. The second theory is that it could be a sturgeon. Sturgeons breach the water and do a tail walk in a pose that makes it look like the neck and head of a sea serpent. Sturgeon never stop growing and are the largest freshwater fish in Lake Manitoba. The average size is about 5 feet, though they can grow up to 7 or 8 feet at least. Another explanation is that it is simply an eel or snake, and that witnesses have misjudged the size. Other theories include that it is some type of prehistoric creature that survived the last ice age, or perhaps a new, reclusive species. Canada is renowned for its number of water cryptids, and Manipogo draws many comparisons to a water cryptid from British Columbia known as Ogopogo, said to inhabit Okanagan Lake. While no concrete evidence has ever been found, there has been numerous eyewitness sightings that have continued to present day. The community embraces the cryptid, and many, despite any evidence, believe something exists in the lake. In the fall of 2022, Dale Hancher, his wife Colleen, and their friend Myrna Germaine Brown were enjoying a warm day on Okanagan Lake in British Columbia, Canada. As the day progressed, off in the distant water, Dale would spot something floating above the surface he couldn't make out. As the three looked on in confusion, Dale told Colleen to grab the camera so they could get a photo. As they got about 10 feet away, Colleen snapped a photo, and the three continued on, puzzled as to what it could be. As Dale later recalled,
"As a boater, I was just looking. Is this something dangerous that needs to be marked so somebody doesn't run into it, like a dead head or something like that? For one thing, the two nodular things are sticking up. Whatever they are, those that are about 3 feet apart. And I've done some research since we took this picture. And it's not a plant. It's not kelp because this is a lake. It's not the ocean. It's not a sturgeon. It's not a dead deer upside down. You can eliminate all these things, but the next question is, what is it?"
As the story gained traction, many in Okanagan Valley would suggest what Dale, Colleen, and Myrna saw was the legendary lake monster named Ogopogo. For centuries, native tribes of the area, such as the Secmawek and the Silt, told stories of a lake monster, which they called Inhahaik. Inhahaik translates several ways, including water god or water demon. In their traditions, and to show reverence to the creature, crossing of the lake demanded sacrificing a small animal. Native lore tells a story of a visiting chief named Chief Timbasket, who failed to show respect. Chief Timbasket refused to sacrifice a small animal due to his denial of the demon creature. As Chief Timbasket took his family across the lake, the monster would attack the family and suck them to the bottom of the lake. Native tribes believed the lake monster was a spirit that inhabited the caves under Rattlesnake Island. As the years passed and more Europeans would settle into the area, one early settler was a woman. a woman with impeccable credentials, and she would spot the creature and perhaps give the first valid sighting to the legend. Susan Allen was a renowned Canadian author and pioneer. In 1860, Susan and her family immigrated to Hope, British Columbia. She would then go on to marry John Fall Allison, one of the founders of the town in Princeton in the year 1868. The couple then moved to Silmakin Valley near the Okanagan Lake, and the Allisons were able to establish good relationships with the local tribes. Together, the two had 14 children, and Susan was able to translate many stories from the tribes into English and record many of her memories of that time through several famous literary works. In her writings, Susan recalls in 1872 seeing a large, serpent-like creature that she was certain was a dinosaur. Yet other sightings occurred in the 20th century as well. 15 years earlier, Métis settler John McDougall claimed that as he had crossed the lake in his canoe, he had his horses tied behind him when suddenly the horses were violently pulled under, and McDougall had to cut the ropes to prevent capsizing. McDougall was adamant he had crossed this exact same way many times. Lake Okanagan is about 250 miles east of Vancouver. The massive lake is about 84 miles long and between 2.5 to 3 miles wide, with an average depth of 249 feet. The stunning beauty of the area is such that it has attracted travelers and tourists for decades for activities such as hiking, boating, and camping. Still, within the massive lake lies much mystery. One such mystery lies in the formation of unexplainable waves. For local residents, there is no doubt that the strange disturbance has often been observed and even photographed on the surface. It appears that when the lake is otherwise calm and there are no boats on the water, anyone who has seen this phenomenon knows that the wave they are seeing is no ordinary wave. Exactly what causes this disturbance is a matter of debate. It may be the result of underwater currents, rising gases, seasonal overturn, or changing temperatures in the lake. Still, in this massive, mysterious lake, the biggest question lies around if there is indeed a lake creature residing there. Although the older reports from Native Americans and Susan Allison provide support for the existence of Ogopogo, the modern reports and wide variety of reports, many with videos and photographs, provide even more support the monster does exist. In 1968, Arthur Folden was driving on Highway 97 when he noticed something moving in the lake. He pulled off the road and filmed what he believed was footage of the creature, and it showed a large wave moving across the water. Folden estimated that Ogopogo was 300 yards offshore. Many sightings would occur in the 1980s, with a reward being posted as well. In 1980, around 50 tourists watched an alleged Ogopogo for about 45 minutes off a beach at Kelowna. There, Larry Tall, visiting from Vancouver, shot some 8mm film capturing the beast for around 10 seconds. In 1989, John Kirk reportedly saw an animal which was around 35 to 40 feet long and consisted of five sleek, jet black humps with a lashing tail. He believed it to be traveling at around 25 miles per hour. Sightings continued through the 90s and the 2000s with additional reports. One report of particular interest was that of Jean Valoria and his girlfriend in August 2008. Valoria and his girlfriend, Jessica Wiegers, were sitting on the lake shore of Peachland as she noticed a disturbance in the water. Jean, an experienced photographer, snapped one photograph, but then, unfortunately, his camera died, and he wasn't able to capture more. Jean never publicized this or spoke of it much, but he did describe the creature as having black hump-like ridges. Surprisingly, 8 days later, south of the original sighting, Jean pulled his car over to watch it, the Highway 97 widening project, and Jessica spotted another disturbance. He snapped 11 photographs of the creature as it was surfacing near a boat. One of the pictures shows a tail or net-like object surfacing the water, while the others show the back and the head of the creature. Sean estimated the creature being about 18 to 20 feet long, based on the boat in the background. The photos were examined by many local experts, and all concluded that it didn't look like any known animal of the lake. Members of the show Monster Quest also studied the photographs and found no evidence of tampering. Descriptions have varied regarding Ogopogo, but certain characteristics have been repeated through the decades. Ogopogo is said to be green with a snail-like body, about 25 meters long. Some say its head looks like a horse, while others say that it's reptilian or goat-like. Still, over the years, different theories have been proposed as to what specifically people have been seeing. Some scientists have put forth the theory that Lake Okanagan creature is probably a form of a primitive whale. And that description of that primitive whale would agree with many descriptions of what many people have claimed to have seen. Other believers think that it could be some prehistoric dinosaur that has managed to seek out the shelter in this massive lake unhidden for years. However, skeptics think that the more recent sightings of Ogopogo were most likely something like waterfowl, otter, or beaver. Sturgeon are another popular suggestion for the skeptics. They are often mistaken as lake monsters, but believers point out their existence in Lake Okanagan is unclear. In fact, there is currently an unclaimed $10,000 reward for concrete evidence of a sturgeon in the lake. Benjamin Radford, a skeptic on the matter, points out that waterspouts are in the lake, and that activity may have led native tribes to believe that gods existed below the surface. Perhaps the individual with the most knowledge concerning the creature and sightings is Kilinoa resident Bill Stusek. He has become to be known as the Ogopogo Man and runs a website named www.ogopogoquest.com, where many reported sightings are archived. Stusek has been hoping to prove the existence of Ogopogo ever since he believed he saw the elusive legend in October of 1978. He and a group of believers have set out to prove scientifically that Ogopogo does indeed exist. Unlike many cryptids, there appears to be an overwhelming amount of evidence supporting that some creature does exist in the lake. There have been many eyewitness reports, often multiple witnesses together over the decades, and very often these reports are accompanied with photographic and video evidence. Investigations under the water, too, using devices such as sonar, have found suspicious activity, leading investigators to believe a large creature or creatures might be lurking around the waters. As the creature has continued to gain fame on an international scale, let's hope that the smoking gun, solid evidence, is one day finally found. For centuries, locals in South Africa have told stories of a mysterious serpent, one that lurks behind waterfalls and other bodies of water. While modern-day skeptics have time and time again dismissed this creature as mere folklore or possibly a giant eel, the Zulu tribe of South Africa insists this animal is very real. And while Zulu culture has many superstitious beliefs surrounding this strange animal, it raises the question, are these beliefs simply stories that have been passed down through generations, or is there actually a strange, undiscovered snake species lurking in the region? In today's episode, we will examine this creature, known as the Inkanyamba, and examine the question, is this cryptid real or simply mythological? To begin, we must first describe the Inkanyamba as well as its habitat. The Inkanyamba is said to be a giant, snake-like creature with a head similar to a horse. These cryptids are said to be about 20 feet long with a fin across the back. Locals say the Inkanyamba lives in aquatic environments and it often hides behind waterfalls. Most notably, the creature is said to hide behind Howick Falls in South Africa. The animal is said to be rarely seen in the summer months, and the Inkanyamba have been referred to as rain animals due to their appearance during storms. In 1996, the animal gained international attention when a newspaper put up a reward for anyone who could produce photographic evidence of the beast. 2 photographs were published, but both were highly questionable and only reignited the debate whether the creature was real or not. Understandably, many said the photographs were simply hoaxes. In May of that year, a rumor began to spread that the South African government was planning on capturing the Inkanyamba. When the local Zulu residents found out, they were furious as they believed that the government didn't know what it was up against. The Zulu people were worried that attempting to capture it might enrage the Inkanyamba and that their village might experience the fallout. It should be noted the government didn't follow through with their plans. Some say this was due to the anger. Others say they realized they weren't equipped to catch the monster in its own territory. While Howick Falls is said to be the primary place this creature has been spotted, it should be noted they are known for migrating and spending time living in different bodies of waters, dams, and behind other waterfalls. One Inkanyamba was seen in the Komazi River, which is around 45 miles south of Howick Falls. Also, they have been spotted around the Midmar Dam, a massive area which covers approximately 500 square miles. Smaller dams near farms in the Dargle area of the Midlands have had reports as well too. Perhaps most interesting, there have been reports of Inkanyamba fighting for territory and also witnesses who say they have seen them mating. Although most eyewitness accounts and stories come from natives and secondhand stories, there have been several documented sightings. In 1995, Bob Teeney, a restaurant owner, spotted the animal at the Howick Falls. Joanne's Longwain, a caretaker, saw the beast twice in 1974 and again in 1981. Andalese Buthizeli, a game ranger, first saw the creature in 1962 and would go on to see it multiple times. The legend of the Inkanyamba is far more complex than just a massive snake-like creature, though. The Zulu believes that the Inkanyamba has supernatural abilities. According to Zulu culture, Inkanyamba attracts a massive tornado during the summer months. The Xhosa tribe claims that this creature is said to take flight in the form of a giant tornado to find its mate. Seasonal tornadoes and high winds are alleged to be from the frustration of a male Inkanyamba and its inability to find a proper mate. Despite these superstitious beliefs, there is evidence this creature, or beliefs around this creature, has existed for quite some time. Stories of these animals date back centuries to Aboriginal cave paintings found throughout the KwaZulu-Natal area in South Africa. This raises the question, is this an actual snake-like animal, simply folklore, or perhaps a combination of the two? There are several theories on what Inkanyamba is. The first states that there is an undiscovered snake-like creature lurking behind Howick Falls and other aquatic areas. It should be noted the size of this creature is not said to be massively big, as 20-foot snakes are found throughout the world. Also, the Zulu people seem absolutely convinced they do exist, but some raise the question that perhaps their culture and beliefs are blinding them. This might be leading them to mistake eels and other snakes for Inkanyambas. Perhaps one other strange thing about this cryptid is the head. It does seem strange that the head is similar to that of a horse. This combination of two animals seems very mythological in nature, as we see other cultures do this as well. People who have investigated this cryptid tend to believe it's some sort of giant eel. Some have suggested the Anguilla mosambica, or the Anguilla marmorata, which can grow to be a length of around 6 feet. To date, there is no hard evidence that Inkanyamba does actually exist. That said, it appears to be more mythological. However, if a new, large snake-like species is found in that area, it wouldn't be the most surprising thing. Crocodiles are large, semi-aquatic reptiles that live throughout the world, most often in tropical environments. This apex predator is carnivorous and known to attack a variety of animals and humans, both in the water and on land. As a result, they are feared and respected around the world. While this man-eater is said to get around 20 feet, there's reports from around the world that these predators can be much, much bigger. For example, adult male Nile crocodiles are said to reach between 16 to 17 feet, but it's well known the infamous Gustave crocodile is at least 20 feet long and still growing. As terrifying as an encounter with Gustave would be, one group of natives in Central Africa in the Congo River region, known as the Bobangi Aboriginals, have told of us stories of massive crocodiles for centuries. One at least twice the size of Gustave. It's said this beast lurks somewhere in the massive remote Congo River basin. The creature is known as Mahamba. Mahamba is typically described as a 50-foot crocodile, or perhaps a creature resembling a giant crocodile. The creature is said to be carnivorous and consume humans. Natives say the animal burrows and digs long tunnels around 1,000 meters long. It is believed the animal lays eggs as well. It's important to point out that massive crocodiles have existed in the planet's history. Aegisuchus is said to probably have been the biggest ever, growing anywhere between 50 and 70 feet. This massive creature's size was estimated from a skull fragment, so it's possible it's even bigger. It's still a matter of debate today, as some believe Sarcosuchus or Purosuchus, which both measure around 41 feet, should claim the title. We should note that all these species did die out millions of years ago. While the natives' accounts are certainly interesting to hear, perhaps it's the accounts of John Reinhard Werner and Roy P. Mackle that provide some evidence this creature could exist. John Reinhard Werner, an engineer in the late 1880s, is said to have encountered several massive crocodiles. Werner wrote that he had seen several considerably longer than the 42-foot steamship on which he worked. His first story concerns a time when Werner went duck hunting off the Congo River. As he scanned the beach, he would suddenly see a massive crocodile, which he estimated to be 50 feet long and 4 feet tall on the beach. It was resting, possibly sleeping, and didn't notice Werner. Werner sent a native boy to grab his rifle, as he said he only had a shotgun with him at the time. The ducks would fly away nearby, and after some time, the ship needing food, Werner fired at the ducks. The massive croc woke up and swam quickly into the ocean. Before moving to the next story, we should point out that it seems strange he chose a rifle over a shotgun. Shotguns are more powerful than rifles, but less accurate. Why would someone bring a shotgun for duck hunting is a valid question. Perhaps, though, he brought the rifle as he was worried about hitting the large creature. His second encounter occurred in 1888 while he was on the same 42-foot steamboat. He recalls how the steamer got caught in shallow water. Initially, he thought that the steamer had hit a hippo, but he quickly realized that the water was only about 3 or 4 feet deep, and no hippo was hiding under there. Then, as he looked overboard on the other side, he saw a massive crocodile, one over 40 feet. The crocodile then swam off quickly and disappeared into the deep water. He concluded the ship must have hit the crocodile, but he didn't think it injured the animal in the slightest. Roy P. Mackle was a cryptozoologist most famous for his work around the Loch Ness Monster. He had heard from several natives about Mahamba, although it's not evident that he saw one in person. The Congo River Basin is one of the largest, most unexplored places on Earth. Around 500 million acres, this area is larger than the state of Alaska, and it's bustling with many unique species of animal and plant life. This area has rivers, forests, savannas, swamps, and flooded forests. Despite this area has been inhabited by humans for thousands of years, and today, around 75 million people reside there. This and the surrounding Congo rainforest, the second largest rainforest in the world, only behind the Amazon, leaves much to the imagination as far as what possible places a massive crocodile could be hiding. For example, the Congo River is the world's deepest river at 720 feet. It's known for being pitch black as one goes deeper, and it's known light cannot penetrate the bottom. While as fascinating as the stories from Werner and Mackle are, unfortunately, there's little to no evidence Mahamba does exist. Still, we should examine the arguments for and against something like this existing. One argument against is simply that John Reinhard Werner was fabricating these stories in order to sell his book. It's completely plausible he blew the size of the crocodile out of proportion. Skeptics will point out that crocodiles are carnivorous animals, and it would be tough for them to find adequate food. This is a fair argument, but it could be the case that these massive crocs adapted to feast on smaller crocodiles, which are abundant in Africa. One important point to consider is the habitat as well. The Congo River Basin is a mosaic of waterways and gives much opportunity for hiding. The surrounding area is, though, more populated than some other areas on Earth. One argument against the existence of the creature is the body argument. Why hasn't a body been found, some will say, or a body part? As crocodiles age, we know they can't die from old age directly, but they lose their teeth and develop cataracts, which indirectly kills them as they are unable to hunt as effectively. We know crocs spend most of their time in the water, So it could be the case these creatures die mostly in the water as well. This would explain the body argument. One other thing believers will say, though, is that the populations of these predators probably isn't very large if they do exist. These predators would need ample space in order to hunt and feed. In terms of theories, in terms of what Mahamba is, there are generally three. The first is that the animal doesn't exist, or a croc size was blown out of proportion. The second theory is that this is a new, undiscovered crocodile, one much larger than the other ones existing today. It could also be the case that it's something actually outside the crocodile family, and just a new species. The third theory is that the creature is a living dinosaur, something that didn't go extinct, and somehow survived and has been undetected. While some believe Mahamba, or a massive croc, does exist, there surely needs to be more evidence of its existence. Even something like a footprint or a body part could help the case. Until then, saltwater crocodiles will continue to hold the title as the biggest and the baddest of the crocs. In 1978, U.S. Navy frigate, the USS Stein, had an unexpected emergency out in the ocean and was forced to return home. The sub's anti-submarine gear suddenly went haywire. As the ship dry-docked and the sailors reunited with loved ones, the question still remained, why did the gear break? Petty Officer Ira Robinson would initially investigate the gear, and what he saw next would truly shock him. There were massive scratches, some up to 4 feet in length. Something strange had damaged the no-foul rubber coating of the sonar system. This rubber protective coating was shredded with massive tears covering around 8%. Gigantic curved hooks were found at the bottom of most of the tears. This area was damaged by something huge and something powerful. Still, the question remained, what was it? Officer Robinson was able to pull what appeared like a claw from one of the cuts, and he stated it looked like it was attacked by a bunch of alligators. Still, to get a better answer, Navy biologist F.G. Wood was called to examine the no-foul rubber coating. Wood would view these massive hooks and recognize these came from the suction cups on giant squids. He would go on and conclude it was a massive squid, the only issue being that these large hooks were 5 times larger than that of the giant squid. The hooks were sent off to be examined in a laboratory setting, and to no surprise, the analyst concluded it was some type of giant squid. Interestingly, based on the hook size, the creature that attacked the ship would have had to have been around 150 feet long. Wood himself also noted that it could have been an undiscovered species that attacked the ship. The evidence left behind doesn't prove they exist, but it is a fascinating correlation, and one that can't be quickly dismissed. One interesting question surrounding the attack on the Stein Navy ship concerns the nature of the attack. The attack isn't consistent with the behavior of giant squid. Giant squid are known to be massive, mysterious, and gentle creatures that lurk in the depths, non-aggressive and known for attacking ships. Massive sea monsters are some of the most popular cryptids today, and with good reason. To explore this as a possibility, we must first look at the longest known, the aforementioned giant squid. This massive invertebrate is said to reach up to 60 feet in length. There's undocumented reports of larger specimens washing up on beaches throughout the world over time, but often these sightings are in underdeveloped countries with no means to preserve the corpse or document it. The colossal squid, which is massive as well, is heavier than the giant squid, but shorter, usually around 30 to 50 feet in length. While these creatures are both extremely large, the fact remains we know very little still about them. The giant squid lives deep in the ocean, while the colossal squid are said to reside in the Antarctic seas, deep as well, around 3,000 feet. We typically only find bodies when either one washes ashore or a fisherman happens to find one. Despite this, massive squids have captured the minds for centuries. On August 6, 1848, Captain Peter McQuay was sailing the HMS Daedalus through the Cape of Good Hope and the island of St. Helena off the African coast when the crew would spot a massive creature. They described it as a gigantic sea serpent. The creature was unlike anything the sailors had seen before. News of the encounter hit the British newspaper, The Times, just 2 months later, recalling the ship's brush with a nearly 100-foot monster. The scientific community itself did not all officially recognize the giant squid in the 19th century, but its corpses started washing up on beaches and bodies were found in the ocean. The new species was finally acknowledged. Was us knowing that the giant squid don't attack ships, we could certainly question just what attacked the Stein Navy ship. There are various other theories out there. Some say maybe it could be a new species of reptile or other species of squid, one larger and more aggressive than either the giant or colossal squid. Most people are aware the Navy has had several encounters with UFOs flying in their airspace. While there is much concern with this, there is much concern too in the Navy around USOs, or unidentified submersible objects, meaning unknown objects in the water. We know less about our deep oceans than the surface of the moon, and perhaps in these deep waters, we will one day learn why so many sailors insisted that there were sea monsters. Lake Akita is a lake in Japan formed by volcanic activity 5,000 years ago. The lake is located at the southern end of the country, right adjacent to the scenic volcano, Mount Kamondoki. Known as Japan's fourth largest lake, with a depth up to 700 feet and a shoreline of 15 kilometers, Lake Akita has an important role in Japan's culture and history. In the first half of the Empire of Japan, named the Meiji era, the Japanese people moved from being an isolated feudal society to a modern industrialized nation-state, an emerging world power. In this era, a canal was built, one that would connect the ocean to the lake. Almost immediately, it was discovered that many saltwater fish and animals began flowing in. Giant eels began surfacing in the lake, with reports up to 8 feet in length, and being renowned for being some of the biggest in the world. With all that was let in, one other creature too allegedly came in, one that has been witnessed in the late 70s by multiple Japanese citizens. This creature is known as the Issie. Issie is described as being a reptilian, dinosaur-like creature that lurks in the depths of Lake Akita. Similar in appearance to the Loch Ness Monster, the creature is described as being about 20 feet long with black, leathery skin. There have been some word-of-mouth sightings by Japanese residents who live around the lake over the decades, but most often, 2 sightings are deemed most credible and certainly the most popular. On September 3rd, 1978, 20 people living in the city of Ibusuki witnessed a black object swimming quickly on the surface of the lake. They described the creature as being around 20 feet in length. Later that same year, a man named Toshika Matsuhara caught the creature on film. Matsuhara claims the video footage shows the strange creature to be around 90 to 100 feet in length. Many dispute this though, as the picture is quite blurry, and there is nothing of scale to compare the alleged monster to. Still though, these incidents made the monster a hot topic, and it became famous, spreading across the country of Japan and the world. As tourism authorities saw the popularity increasing, they capitalized on this. They began promoting stories around it and building things around the community in an effort to market Issie in an attempt to attract visitors to the region. They even created a mythology to explain Issie's beginning. In the story, a white mare lived on the shores of the lake with her foal. When the foal was captured by samurai, the white mare jumped into the lake due to devastation, transforming into a huge water creature. The creature surfaces now and then to look for her child. So is there any truth that Issie might actually exist? It seems more plausible that this cryptid is perhaps a case of mistaken identity. There has been some sightings, but in this narrator's opinion, it seems more likely than not that the witnesses saw giant eels or perhaps something else. It seems plausible that an eel could reach 10 or 12 feet, as some right now are already around 8 or 9. It should be said that gauging length in the water is not an easy task either, especially if there is nothing of known size to compare it against. As for the video footage, it's quite blurry, and from the footage, it's difficult to estimate any length. With the alleged creature under the water, it seems this might just be branches or leaves in a pattern that looks like an animal. We also have to remember that this footage was taken at the height of the Issie mania, as many people were scouring the lake to see it. It's also possible as well that Matsuhara faked the incident and created some sort of Issie look-alike to float in the water. Despite the low probability of this cryptid's existence, we shouldn't dismiss other water cryptids as mere folklore. Others, such as Ogopogo and the Loch Ness Monster, have had multiple independent witnesses over decades. These and other water cryptids certainly deserve our attention and appear legit. On top of that, oceanic cryptids is another area where other unknown animals may exist. Despite all this, the lake itself is absolutely panoramic, with volcanoes surrounding the crystal blue water. It's certainly a place worth visiting in Japan. The Altamaha is one of the largest rivers in Georgia. Flowing east around 130 miles, the river empties into the Atlantic Ocean and has one of the largest drainage basins on the East Coast. The river has a rich history, with Native Americans and Europeans traveling on it, allowing them to easily conduct commerce. As the river approaches the Atlantic Ocean, it becomes a massive estuary with dark, colored water. This swampy transition area connects to both the river and the ocean and is home to hundreds of endangered species. And these dark waters, though, lurks something different. An unknown creature that has been witnessed for centuries by the people residing around the river. The monster is known as the Altamaha and nicknamed Alti. Alti is an aquatic cryptid reported up and down the river, and witnesses claim it is around 10 to 15 feet in length and having snake and eel-like qualities. The creature is said to have 2 to 3 humps, with a tail that is horizontal like a porpoise. Many believe this animal is prehistoric, and others speculate this cryptid originates from the ocean and comes to the Altamaha River to lay its eggs. It's an interesting theory and is evidenced by several sightings of young Alties and also by the variation in length, with some witnesses reporting seeing an 80-foot monster, with others seeing the cryptid only 10 feet long. Sightings of Alti date back hundreds of years, with French explorers from the 1500s first witnessing it among non-natives. Many of these accounts, as well as Native American stories, were passed down through oral tradition. However, one well-documented sighting occurred in 1830. This was picked up by Savannah's Georgian newspaper with multiple sightings of the creature. The main witness was Captain Delano, who reported seeing a large creature off of St. Simon's Island below the mouth of the Altamaha River. He described the creature as being 70 feet long, with a circumference of a barrel. Its head resembled that of an alligator. During this sighting, 5 other men witnessed the beast as well. Perhaps the most famous report occurred in 1980, though. In the summer of that year, Andy Green and Barry Prescott alleged to have seen an Alti stuck on a mud bank near Cathead Creek. The creature was half in the water, half on land, thrashing and trying to free itself. The men said it was dark-colored, with a rough skin, and that it moved like nothing they had ever seen before. As the men would state, the creature was huge, 3 to 4 feet thick, and around 20 feet long. The men watched the beast for 10 minutes before it finally freed itself, went under the dark water, and disappeared. Other reports describe the creature as being more snake-like in appearance. In the 1920s, several timbermen on the river reported witnessing a large snake-like water monster. 15 years later, a group of men were hunting and saw what they would later call a giant snake swimming through the river. In 1960, 2 brothers fishing spotted an unknown creature and said it had a snout like an alligator, a horizontal tail, a triangular ridge along the top of its body, and sharp, pointed teeth. There's been numerous experienced fishermen and outdoorsmen who have spotted the creature over the decades. But the question remains, what is the Alti? The first theory says that Alti is a prehistoric animal, and some versions say related to the Loch Ness monster, while others say they're not related. Many believe Alti spends most of its time in the ocean, but when it's time to lay its eggs, it swims upstream the river and finds a dark, secluded spot. From a biological perspective, this theory is interesting as many animals travel great distances to lay their eggs. Another theory that has become popular is that people are not seeing a new creature, but an existing one known as the alligator gar. These creatures do match pretty closely with what many of the witnesses have seen, and the largest on record is measured around 20 feet. Could there just be massive alligator gars in the river estuary? Critics of this theory point out that most alligator gars are found in Louisiana and Texas. Also, it doesn't explain the size differences from many of the witnesses. There's quite a difference between 20 feet and 50 feet. It also seems strange that experienced fishermen and hunters wouldn't be able to ID this animal. Despite the differences in theories, there's pretty much a consensus that Alti is not aggressive. Still, it appears though this unknown creature happens to be very recluse. The Outback is a massive remote area in northern and western Australia. The area is sparsely populated and houses some of the most dangerous animals in the world, including the saltwater crocodile. Inside this region may lurk another creature, though, one that Aboriginal tribes have told stories about for centuries. The unknown creature is known as the Bunyip. The Bunyip has been described various ways the last few centuries, but the one thing that remains consistent is that the descriptions and the stories appear to be ever-changing. The animal has been described as having both a round neck and an elongated neck as well. It's been described as having a body several different ways, like a hippo, a horse, or a manatee. Still, it typically is reported one of two ways the majority of the time. First, as either resembling a seal or resembling a swimming dog, or second, resembling a long-necked creature with a small head. The seal dog variety is most often seen and is described as being between 4 and 6 feet long, with a shaggy black or brown coat. The long neck version is described as being between 5 and 15 feet long, and is said to have black or brown fur, large ears, small tusks, a head like a horse, and an elongated neck about 3 feet long with a horse-like tail. The Bunyip is said to be extremely reclusive, nocturnal, and only inhabit lakes, swamps, and rivers. According to Aboriginal legends, they swim quickly since they have fins or flippers and have a loud, roaring call. What they feed on is also a matter of controversy. Some say they only eat crayfish, although many say they are predators and will attack humans, most especially women and children. During the mid-19th century, when the Europeans arrived, there were several important sightings. The Europeans were told of the creature by Aboriginals and anticipated discovering it at some point. In July 1845, this would be printed in the Geelong Advertiser newspaper under the headline, "The Wonderful Discovery of a New Animal." The article described bones and fossils belonging to a bunyip, and in the article an Aboriginal man who had seen many bunyips and confirmed that the bones did indeed belong to one. That same man was able to draw a photo of a bunyip and also recalled the story of a woman that was killed by the creature, as well as an Aboriginal man named Mumbaron. And Mumbaron was a man who showed several deep wounds on his back, and these wounds were apparently made by the claws of the bunyip. In January 1846, a strange skull was found in Balnarad. Aboriginals identified it as a bunyip, but it would be later identified by zoologists as a deformed skull of a calf. Still, the event created excitement around the legend in the country. Perhaps the most famous and legit account of an eyewitness to the bunyip comes from William Buckley. Buckley was an escaped convict who went and lived with the Aboriginal tribes for 30 years. In 1852, he wrote an account describing the bunyip. Buckley stated he saw the creature several times. He noted he could never see the whole animal, just the back, which appeared to be covered with feathers of a dusty gray color. He believed it to be the size of a full-grown calf. Buckley also claimed the creature was common in the Barwon River and tells of an Aboriginal woman who was killed by one. According to the Aboriginals, the bunyip was believed to have supernatural powers. Edwin Stockwell traveled on the Murray and Goulburn rivers, and in 1957 wrote an account of his encounters with the bunyip. He claimed that the bunyip was simply a freshwater seal. Stockwell said the animal had 2 small paddles, or fins, attached to the shoulders, a long swan-like neck, a head like a dog. He said the animal was covered with hair, like the platypus, and the color was a glassy black. He said he encountered around 6 of these, with the smallest being about 5 feet and the biggest around 15 feet. Stockwell sketched the animal and showed it to several members of the Goulburn tribe, who declared that that picture was Bunyip's brother, meaning a creature similar to the Bunyip. Still, one consensus around the creature revolves around the habitat, which is said to be almost entirely in water. Aboriginal stories tell of the Bunyip's connection to a complex spiritual worldview that emphasizes the harmony between people and the natural world. According to the Nagarani people of southeastern Australia, greed created this monster. According to the legend, a man caught more fish than he needed, and powerful elders turned him into a half-man, half-fish beast for his sin. As time has progressed, the creature's reputation has evolved from an aggressive monster that punished those who harm nature into a mysterious, safe creature. This could be due to many believing the creature is simply spiritual in nature, as well as others believing the creature is simply a seal that got lost. Whatever one's belief, the waters of the outback are extremely dangerous already, with saltwater crocodiles roaming around, as well as other animals. So, let's hope this creature, if it does exist, is not too dangerous. The African Great Lakes are a series of massive lakes in East Africa. These include Lake Victoria, the second largest freshwater lake in the world by area, Lake Tanganyika, the world's second largest freshwater lake by volume and depth, and Lake Malawi, the world's 8th largest freshwater lake by area. The lakes are said to house around 10% of the world's fish species, and the region is renowned for its biodiversity. Inside one of these lakes, Lake Victoria, a creature is said to lurk, one that has been there for centuries. It is known as the Lukwata. Lukwata is said to derive its name from someone speaking in broken English and looking at the water saying, Lukwata. The most famous account of a Lukwata sighting was recorded by H. Bell, who shot one on the western border of Uganda near the Similiki River and Lake Albert. It had a snake-like head, a neck several inches long, a tail only a few inches long, and flippers like a sea turtle's. It was identified as relatively small by a native boy. He noted it didn't have a hard shell. Bell believed that the Lukwata was an odd species of turtle, and on the water surface gave the impression of a long-necked animal. Other lesser-known accounts have been reported as well. W. Grant, provincial commissioner of Jinja, claims to have seen a Lukwata swimming down the Napoleon Gulf, although many question this sighting, as Grant admittedly was far away. He reported its head was out of the water, and he could not make out any features. Clement Hill of the Foreign Office had a far closer encounter when a Lukwata off Homa Mountain tried to grab a man off of his ship. He saw a lizard-like head, dark-colored, with a 4-foot-long neck attached to a large, rounded mass that formed the body. The creature was reported to have a tiny tail. E.G. Whalen, head of the Geological Survey of Uganda, claimed to have heard the Lukwata's distant bellowing. Also, Whalen said local tribes showed him pieces of Lukwata bone, and that he was told that the Lukwata fought with the crocodiles to the death. The natives used pieces of skin from the Lukwata lost in those fights as potent amulets. Lukwata has been witnessed to be up to 100 feet long, although most reports put them in the 20 to 30 foot range. They are generally described with a square-shaped head, like an eel, a body that resembles a dolphin, and having a copperish-brownish skin color with a white underbelly. Still, others remark it is more like a turtle with no shell. Many say they prefer to hunt at night, although they're not immune to hunting during the daytime. Lukwatas are carnivorous creatures that primarily feed on fish. Still, it is said the Lukwata does attack other animals, and mainly its biggest enemy, the crocodile. Lukwatas are said to hate crocodiles, and most believe that this is because they are both apex predators. Similarly, Lukwata view hippos as a threat, and they attack hippos, sometimes killing them or killing themselves. It is said the Lukwatas have extremely powerful jaws, capable of snapping massive ships, and are able to bite through the bone of giraffes. The preferred place for Lukwata to fight is in the water. However, they do attack animals nearby water. Their main objective when attacking is to first get the animal in the water and then kill their prey. Lukwata's low, flat bodies allow them to do this with ease. When attacking, a Lukwata uses its oversized jaw to grab its victim and then fling it into the water, making it easier prey. Because of their size and strength, it is said boats crossing the lake can be dangerous if one runs across a Lukwata. Lukwatas are associated with whirlpools in the lake, and Jalu fishermen, a native to the area, have tales of Lukwata attacking their canoes. A Lukwata attack can easily lead to boats being capsized. Despite all the witness reports and stories from local tribes, there doesn't appear to be hard evidence this cryptid exists. Still, this is Africa, a land of dense jungle, and the massive African Great Lakes would surely be a terrific place to hide if this creature exists. Also, the area is extremely diverse with a wide range of diverse wildlife, both on land and in water. It's surely possible that this creature has been mistaken for something else, and that the bones are from other animals too. Perhaps a large snake was responsible for many of the attacks and the fights. It's also possible the creature only comes out at night and stays hidden during daylight hours. This could explain the lack of modern-day evidence. One final thought is that the creature could have went extinct decades ago, but did exist at one particular time. Native American legends tell of many stories involving cryptids, lost worlds, aliens, and paranormal activity. Every once in a while, a story emerges, so unbelievable though, that it raises questions as to why the story exists, or if there's some truth to it at all. The Hiwassee River passes through downtown Murphy, North Carolina, where it flows past a site famous in Cherokee culture. The legend tells of a house-sized leech that commanded the waters and used them to drown unsuspecting people to the bottom of the river and consume them. This place became known as Tlanusi, or the Leech Place. Centuries ago, Cherokee Indians tell a story of a man who laughed at the legendary story and said that he was not afraid of anything in the Valley River. One day, he painted his face put on his finest buckskin, and headed off toward the river, while his tribe followed from a distance. As he went down the trail, he went out upon the ledge of the rock, singing in high spirits and mocking the beast. As he was halfway across, suddenly the water began to boil into a white foam, and a massive wave rose up and carried him underwater. The man was never seen from again. Another story occurred when a woman went out on the rock ledge and she wanted to catch fish as she was sick of not eating any meat. She laid her baby down and began fishing when suddenly the water began to boil. Luckily, the woman sprinted to her baby and was able to hurry off before the creature grabbed them. Today, many people visit the Leech place with a dock extending out into the water. As far-fetched as it sounds, perhaps the creature was a prehistoric animal that didn't die out and lived secluded. Still, most people believe this legend either never existed or was simply a story told in Cherokee culture. And without evidence, it will probably remain this way. For thousands of years, across multiple continents, stories have surfaced concerning monsters lurking in the depths of lakes and rivers, and even sometimes terrorizing fishermen and locals. Often, many of these stories are dismissed quickly as fiction, despite multiple independent eyewitness reports, and all too often, video and photographic evidence. In this episode, we will examine a lesser-known lake monster, the cryptid known as Dobhar-Chu, or the Irish crocodile. In 2000, Irish artist Sean Corcoran and his wife were boating on a lake on Omey Island in Connemara, County Galway, Ireland. What they saw that day would shock them, and most people wouldn't believe it upon hearing it. According to Sean, an unknown creature swam the width of the lake in what seemed like seconds to him. After reaching the shoreline, Sean said it finally leapt onto a huge boulder and gave the most haunting screech before finally disappearing. Sean, who was familiar with the wildlife and the legend of the Dobhar-Chu, was positive that they had spotted the Irish crocodile. He described it as large, dark, and with orange flippers. Throughout history, the Irish crocodile has been described as a combination of dog, otter, and fish. It is said that it is a bloodthirsty, gruesome creature that lives deep in the waters of a lake, river, or even the ocean, and is known to be able to travel great distances in water or on land. Around 10 to 15 feet in length, this lake monster is known for its speed, aggression, and appetite for human flesh. Interestingly, there are usually two of these creatures, and when one is killed, its mate will swim up from the depths of the water and avenge the killing by pursuing its attacker, often eating him or her. This happens because when the Irish crocodile is about to die, it gives off an eerie, high-pitched whistle to warn its mates. However, all sightings of the Dobhar-Chu, it is the account in Glenade, County Leitrim of 1722, and the murder of Grace McLaughlin that is most famous. Grace McLaughlin lived in the townland of Crivilla, which is close to the border of Leitrim and Sligo, and on the northwestern part of Glenade Lake. On September 22nd, 1722, Grace came down to the lake to bathe and to wash some clothes. While she was doing this, a huge monster emerged from the lake and violently attacked her, ultimately killing Grace. Later, she was found by her husband, Terence, and as Terence managed to see the body on the side of the lake, to his horror, he saw the huge beast which had killed his wife. The creature was lying asleep across her dead body. Heartbroken with grief and fury, Terence knew at once that it was the Irish crocodile. Terence immediately found his dagger and killed the monster. However, as is usual with this kind of creature, during its death, it let out a high-pitched whistle which alerted its mate to what was happening. Immediately, a second Irish crocodile emerged at once from the depths of the lake. Terrified, Terence took to his heels and jumped on his horse and began riding for his life as the creature pursued him. Terence rode for several miles, with the Dobhar-Chu chasing behind him. After being chased, Terence had to stop to have his horse's foot reshod. Luckily, he couldn't have picked a better stopping point. The blacksmith at Cashel-Garin knew the ways of this creature. He gave Terence a sword and told him, when the creature charges, he'll put his head right through the horse. As soon as he does this, you be quick and cut his head off. Terence, still on his horse, stood his ground near the forge. The huge beast came at him full charge and then put its head right through the horse, as predicted by the blacksmith. Determined to avenge his wife's murder, Terence put his sword through the Dobhar-Chu's head, killing it instantly. What's fascinating about this story is there's evidence to back it up. The grave of Grace actually exists. Furthermore, carved on her tombstone is a detailed depiction of her killer, the Dobhar-Chu. It is located in Conwall Cemetery in the townland of Drummonds. Drummonds is near the village of Kinlow and a part of the approach to valley of Glenade. The tomb itself is so old that most of the written details are illegible. However, Grace's name and that of her husband can be made out. The carved image of the Dobhar-Chu is much clearer. The creature is depicted lying down with its head and neck flung backward so that it lies flat along its back in its death throes. A spear-like weapon is shown piercing the base of the creature's neck, re-emerging below its body, and gripped by a human fist at its upper end. Also, and less known, both the Dobhar-Chu and McLaughlin's horse are buried in County Sligo, not far from Cashel-Garin Stone Fort, where they were both killed. Reports of sightings of Dobhar-Chu date back as far as 1684. Roderick Flaherty described it in his book, A Chorographical Description of West Connaught. In this book, Flaherty described the creature as coming out of the deep water and pulling an innocent man toward the bottom. Another account was recorded by Miss Wallington in the 1896 edition of the Journal of Royal Society of Antiquaries of Ireland. Miss Walkington described it as being half wolf dog and half fish. The creature is believed to live in many lakes around Ireland. Most especially Achill Island in County Mayo is where the largest number of modern sightings in Ireland have been seen. Although many believe the creature is nothing more than folklore, some point out that it could actually exist. One theory is that this creature travels extensively, and this could explain the difficulty finding it, as some researchers have searched for it. One other theory is that it resides mostly underwater and it stays in very murky waters in remote areas. Despite efforts to find evidence of the creature, nothing has been found as of this date. The lake districts of Chile and Argentina stretch across the Andes Mountains in northern Patagonia. On the Argentina side, the Nahuelito Lake is a glacial lake renowned for its crystal clear, pristine waters and jaw-dropping views. The lake is almost entirely surrounded by the towering Andes Mountains, and it has become quite a hotspot for outdoor enthusiasts. Still, it's important to remember the lake itself has around 200 square miles of surface area and goes to a depth of around 1,400 feet. Inside this lake, one of the most well-known cryptids in Argentina resides, a large, mysterious water creature known as Nahuelito. Nahuelito is said to be some type of water serpent, or possibly a living plesiosaur, described as being similar to the Loch Ness Monster, or Canada's Ogopogo. Nahuelito is said to be 10 to 15 meters long, with 2 hunches, leathery skin, and sometimes a swan-like neck. Although native tribes told stories about this creature for centuries, Nahuelito wasn't first searched for or documented until the early 20th century. Perhaps the most well-known documented sighting is that of George Garrett. In 1910, Garrett was the manager of a company that sailed around the Nahuelito Lake. During the year 1922, as searching for large unknown creatures became quite popular, he wrote to the Toronto Press about what he witnessed. He recalled one day he saw an animal that, according to his testimony, seemed to have a 15 to 20 foot diameter, projected perhaps 6 feet over the water, and remained in sight for around 15 minutes. The press ran with the story, but the next story is what perhaps made this cryptid so popular. American gold miner Martin Sheffield settled in Patagonia in 1880, and in 1922 he wrote to Buenos Aires zoo director Clemente Onelli about a long-necked, swan-headed creature that dwelled in a lagoon near Epeyuan. Epeyuan was a village about 90 miles south of Bariloche. Sheffield described in his letter how he had seen crushed bushes and large footprints leading down to the water. When he looked at the water, he would see the long head and neck of the creature out in front of him. Director Onelli had been receiving quite a number of reports of this monster in the region, but now, with Sheffield's letter, he had the ammo to fund and organize a search. The search attracted quite a bit of attention, as Sheffield was a renowned former sheriff and had come to the area following the trail of the famous bandits Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, who had fled to Argentina. Onelli would enlist Jose Chiagi, the superintendent of the Buenos Aires, to organize and lead the expedition to Epeyuan Lake, as well as other major lakes in Patagonia. After the search yielded no results, the searches for Nahuelito would continue, and perhaps more importantly, there were many more sightings up until modern day. The epicenter of the sightings, though, for Nahuelito is said to be most prominent from the shores of San Carlos de Bariloche. There, the beast is said to have been spotted countless times. So many sightings have happened, in fact, that a poll conducted in the town recently showed 50% of the population believe Nahuelito is real. One of the more interesting stories surrounding this cryptid is said to have occurred in 1960. In February, the Argentinian Navy chased an unidentified undersea object for 18 days around the massive lakes in Patagonia. They never found the strange underwater object, but the story grew to international attention, appearing in magazines such as Newsweek. An article in the New York Post by William R. Rudy on February 17, 1960, was titled "The Monster Rally Down Argentina Way." It theorizes that perhaps the Loch Ness Monster may have swam from northern Scotland to Patagonia. While somewhat far-fetched, the article highlights how historically cryptids used to garner mainstream media attention instead of the cold shoulder. Still, there's a number of theories as to what the Argentine Navy was following during that time. One is that this was a foreign submarine that had came into the territory. To date, no country has admitted this was them. Some believe this could have been a Nazi submarine. It's well documented many Nazis fled to Argentina after World War II. Some even say Hitler himself, who some believe didn't commit suicide, came to Argentina. In fact, there is speculation he had a home right on the coast of the Nahuelito Lake. Another theory concerns that this large, unknown object was some sort of animal, for example, a whale that had swam in from the seas. Although swimming in freshwater can be quite hazardous for a whale's health, whales can survive for short periods in fresh water. An example of this would be Humphrey the whale. In 1985, Humphrey, a humpback whale, accidentally swam into the San Francisco Bay and up the Sacramento River, which was freshwater. After swimming up it around 70 miles, he eventually became trapped and had to be lured back out. During this time, which was several weeks, he became very weak, but eventually he headed back down the Sacramento River, where salinity increased, and he made it into the San Francisco Bay and eventually out to the open ocean. The other theory concerns was this mysterious object, Nahuelito, or another undiscovered creature lurking in these lakes. There was certainly speculation this is what the Navy was tracking. In 1988, there were photos of an alleged Nahuelito published in a magazine of the Rio Negro newspaper. They were taken at a short distance with an analog camera. The object was near the coast of Bariloche. The man who took them said, "It is not a log of whimsical shapes. It is not a wave. El Nahuelito showed his face." The man left these words, along with the photos in a letter, to the magazine. While many modern-day sightings have occurred, it's important to remember the sightings have happened for centuries. The Tlanusi people, who have lived in the Patagonia wilds for thousands of years, tell stories of a huge creature spotted swimming beneath the surface of the Nahuelito Lake. Known to them as El Cuero, the monster was said to resemble a giant stingray with a sucker-like mouth that it used to eat its unsuspecting victims. Parents in the tribe would warn their children to stay away from the beaches, or else El Cuero might drag them beneath the waves. The Patagonia area in general is known historically as having large monsters. In the 16th century, Portuguese explorers claimed they spotted monsters roaming on Patagonia's beaches and in cypress trees. They swore they saw giant men and named the region Patagoa, or in Portuguese, Bigfoot. These early settlers also caught glimpses of monsters swimming beneath the waves of the region's many lakes. With so many sightings in history, was Nahuelito a real creature or just a legend that ran out of control? If it does exist, what is it exactly? There are several theories on that. The first is that it was a prehistoric animal that survived. While this theory seems the most logical at first, there are several questions concerning this. First, plesiosaurs are said to have gone extinct around 66 million years ago. The Nahuelito Lake and surrounding lakes, which are glacial lakes, formed after the last ice age, some 14,000 years ago. This leaves quite a gap between when the lakes formed in the time they went extinct. However, it could be the case they swam in from the ocean and just decided to stay in the cool waters. One other thing to note is the creature could be amphibious or able to breathe out of water. Martin Sheffield's sighting did say the creature left tracks on the shore. A second theory concerning the animal is that it is a new species, perhaps one that traveled in from the ocean and stayed in the remote areas of the lake, away from the tourist commotion. The final theory states that this creature doesn't exist, or perhaps did at one point, but not anymore. It's easy to confuse things in the water, and it's not uncommon for people to overestimate size of things that they see in the water. The story did appear to explode the cryptid's popularity once the 1922 search ensued. To date, sightings of the creature continue, but until some documentation is recorded, Nahuelito, unfortunately, will continue to be considered a myth. Prior to the 1920s, a string of small, freshwater lakes stretched across part of central Kansas, coming within a couple of miles of the town of Inman. Eventually, after some time, the lakes were drained, landscape was altered, leaving Lake Inman and a few low pockets of water where the lake was abnormally deep. These became known to locals as sinkholes. Of these, the largest became known as the Big Sinkhole, and there, a legend was born in the form of a large, serpent-like creature named Sinkhole Sam. Sinkhole Sam has been described over the years multiple ways, with eyewitness accounts of this snake being varying length. Still, the majority say its length is similar to that of a python, around 15 feet, and that its girth, shockingly, is around 2 to 3 feet tall. Some say a tractor couldn't ride over it. The most famous sighting occurred in 1953 when two men fishing at the sinkhole, Albert Neufeld and George Reger, spotted the creature. Neufeld, then 18 years old, fired 2 shots with his hunting rifle, but wasn't able to kill the beast. Both claimed that it was approximately 15 feet in length and as round as an automobile tire. Still, the year prior, multiple witnesses around Inman reported spotting the creature, and this led to newspaper columnist Ernest Alva Dewey traveling to Inman to investigate. Dewey, whose writing career began as a publicist for a traveling circus, had a reputation for poking fun at local legends. In 1953, when news of the massive snake reached Kansas City, the Newspaper Enterprise Association dispatched reporter Mary K. Flynn to the scene. Flynn found numerous responsible citizens who described Sinkhole Sam as around 15 feet long, with a fluted tail and a long fin on its back. Eyewitnesses also mentioned Sam's big, non-snake-like grin. Flynn hailed Sinkhole Sam as Kansas's answer to the Loch Ness Monster. In the 1960s, a similar creature was reported about 50 miles south of Inman at Kingman State Lake. The State Lake, while not a naturally occurring lake, was formed from a naturally occurring marsh and is located next to the Ninsa River. In the late 1960s, people in the town of Kingman organized a hunting party to track down a 20-foot monster that was as big around as a man. This animal had allegedly devoured a calf and dragged it into Kingman County State Lake. The animal was never found. Perhaps the most fascinating angle of the legend of Sinkhole Sam was that this cryptid certainly could have existed. There is a chance, due to the changing landscape and draining of the area, that Sam could have been a species that got trapped in Inman Lake. Perhaps normally this creature lived underground. One interesting facet of the stories is that Sam seems to be a somewhat reasonable size at 15 feet. Often, eyewitnesses who are lying attempt to sensationalize their story by exaggerating the details. Theories have existed as to what this could have been. One is that it was a boa constrictor, python, or other snake non-native to the area that was released into the wild. Other theories exist that this could have been a massive earthworm or sea worm. The giant Gippsland earthworm has been known to reach 9 feet, although that wouldn't explain the girth reported by many. Earthworms spend the majority of their time underground, and perhaps the creature was trapped in Inman Lake. Sea worms could certainly reach the size, but none have been found that swim in fresh water. Eels are another option that could be what Sam was. There are reports of eels over 3 feet in length in freshwater lakes in the United States. Perhaps Sam was an extremely large eel. There will probably never be a satisfactory answer to what Sam was, as well as another sighting in Inman Lake. People still look out for the creature today, but there hasn't been a sighting in decades. Still, it's within reason that at one time, some large, snake-like animal did exist in the lake and probably perished and went extinct. Too often, scientists quickly dismiss many cryptids as folklore. They point to many things, such as a lack of a body, few witness sightings, and other factors that don't support the existence of the creature. However, just because a creature is extinct now doesn't mean it didn't exist at one point in human history. We've seen this with many animals, such as the massive Titanoboa snakes scientists dismiss as just tall tales. While there's much debate over many animals thought extinct, one thing is clear though: Earth has had some dangerous and scary creatures throughout history. In today's episode, we will examine a creature that was observed for centuries in South America. As recent sightings have dropped though, many quickly dismiss this animal as simple folklore. However, as we will see, there's good reason to believe this massive monster did indeed exist, and existed not too long ago. This creature is known as the Minhocao. The Minhocao is described as a large earthworm-type cryptid that once existed, or perhaps still exists, in the jungles of South America. It resembles a giant worm with scaly black skin, has a mouth, and also has a strange pair of tentacle-like structures coming from its head. Some say it has a pig-like snout, and some accounts show the cryptid as being 40 feet, while other witnesses say it is easily over 100 feet long. Much is not known about the creature, but many theories exist as to its behavior and where it lives. It is believed to be an animal that burrows, producing extremely deep trenches as it digs. From these tracks, many estimate the body width to be around 10 feet. Reportedly, houses and other structures have collapsed due to the Minhocao burrowing underneath. The creature is also known to alter waterways with the deep paths that it produces. The tunnels made by the animal are said to occur most often after heavy rain, indicating that the Minhocao is more active during heavy rains. Some believe they only come out in the rain. Many say the lack of sightings by humans was explained by the Minhocao having retiring habits or going under the ground. It is also reported by some to attack other large animals like livestock, and while in the water, to attack from below. Although there hasn't been a documented sighting of the creature in 130 years, that certainly wasn't the case in the 1800s and before then. In December 1846, French naturalist Augustin Saint-Hilaire recalled stories of the Minhocao in the Padre Aranda and Fia lakes in Brazil. He and others had been told about the creature by locals in Brazil when they arrived. Aranda witnessed the creature and said they lived in the lakes and had often dragged horses and horned cattle under the water. He believed Minhocao to be related to the Minhocao, Portuguese for earthworm. Decades later, more documented writings would occur. In 1878, German naturalist Dr. Fritz Müller summarized in Nature, a scientific journal, the Minhocao. This article was largely based on the sightings by Curitibanos resident Senhor Labino. In May of that year, Müller said he was contemplating bringing a dead corpse of one over to Europe. It garnered much interest, with a London newspaper proposing in the early 20th century to send an expedition to Brazil to find out if the Minhocao actually exists. In the article, Labino claimed the monster lived in the highlands in the south of the country, and he described it as a gigantic earthworm, 50 yards in length and 5 in width, and covered with bones, as if it were the coat of mail. Another sighting comes from Francisco de Amar Barea, who stated that the creature had a snout similar to a pig. Other sightings would occur, and variations on features and size would vary. One account said the creature had a horn. In 1849, there was a claimed sighting of a Minhocao corpse that was discovered. It was said to have skin which was as thick as the bark of a pine tree and formed of hard scales like those of an armadillo. Various theories exist as to what the creature is exactly. In the book On the Track of Unknown Animals, Bernard Heuvelmans suggests that the animal may be a surviving glyptodon. Glyptodons were giant armadillos that once existed that were the size of a car. However, critics of this theory point out that there is quite a difference between what's seen and this prehistoric creatures. Also, there's no evidence these prehistoric creatures displayed burrowing behavior. Another theory comes from cryptozoologist Carl Schuker. He suggested that this animal may be an example of a giant caecilian. Caecilian are amphibians with worm-like, limbless bodies, subterranean, and tentacle-like sense organs on the head. Moreover, they live in the jungles of South America. This does fit the description of the Minhocao quite well. Still, skeptics will point out that this animal are not even close to the size of the cryptid. While it's not entirely clear what this monster is, or if it still exists, it's evident that back in the 1800s and prior, there were many reports surrounding the creature. In this episode, we have only discussed the documented reports, meaning reports by the few Europeans who ventured into the jungles of Brazil. It should be said that many more reports could exist if there was documentation from local tribes. Also, we can speculate that this creature is primarily composed of soft tissue, and perhaps that's why bones have never been found. It's also important to note that these creatures live deep in the jungles of the Amazon, not a place many venture to. The final question remains though, could this cryptid still exist today? Admittedly, the evidence is somewhat against it, as there hasn't been a documented sighting in 130 years, with many more non-natives exploring the jungle. Still, the Amazon is a massive, dense jungle, and it's surely possible these creatures spend the majority of their time underground. Even more so, if they live underground in the dark, we can guess that they might only come out at night, and as discussed earlier, primarily come out in deep downpours. From this, it's at least plausible to believe they could exist, as those dark and wet conditions are not exactly the ideal environment for humans to witness the creature.